Hey everybody, this is Dave. This is volume 2 of the series I'm making on government waste, especially at the DOD, Department of Defense, Department of Logistics. Now, last time we covered the silliness that goes on with the vehicles. We're going to do a brief recap. First of all, the first things we learned that A, I'm not a public speaker. B, I need a diet. And C, the government wastes money. In other news, water's wet. Okay? All right. Thanks, guys, for giving me some information. You guys have emailed me some information back and forth about, or called me, whatever, about what's going on at the DOL, or DLA. What's happening is the DLA is severely mismanaged for one reason or another, and is actually laying off people right now as we speak. They're laying off people, closing down some functions. Why? Because they don't have money. The problem is, if you don't have money at the DOL, that means critical parts might not get to the places where they need to be. Vehicles may be down, they may run out of ammunition, fuel, whatever. And so basically, to put it quite bluntly, soldiers can die because of this. Literally. They don't have money, people could die, and the reason why is because they're wasting it. Again, big piles of money on the ground, taking gas, pouring on it, it's gone. Okay, vehicle overview. I didn't name names in the last email, or last video, sorry. I'll be quite blunt. The guys that are in charge of this mismanagement to the point of epic proportions are Jeff Garrett. He's a holdover from the Obama administration. He works at the DOD, and he's the one moving everything from A, there's no more A vehicles anymore, DML code A vehicles, to Q6 and on to C1. Anything new coming down, it's automatically C1, it's got to be shredded. He's moving everything to Q6, and by the end of the year, he has assured me on the phone that everything will be C1. Now, the other guy is Nate Barnes. He works at TACOM. He's the J13. He is a GS15 also, and he refuses to move any of the C1 vehicles to Q6 because his lawyers or somebody has told him that he can't do that. Okay, whatever. But there is no clear vehicle policy. There is no adult in the room right now. You got a bunch of GS15s going back and forth, making policy changes on their own because Jeff Garrett told me straight up his boss is the Department of Defense, Undersecretary of Defense for Logistics. Guess what? There isn't one right now. The post is unfilled, so he can do whatever he wants, and so he's been waiting for these policies to come down that he can do, and he's doing them. All right, my thing is propose a new policy. Policy is that if you can buy it on the internet from a licensed vendor or a legitimate vendor, why are you demilling it? The guys can go online and buy it. It's just nuts. Here's a prime example. You got a camouflage net, okay? Camouflage net has got to be shredded. Why? Because there's a filament in there that actually can make it radar transparent. So what that means is if the enemy got a hold of these, they could put these up, and we couldn't see what was behind being hidden by these things. Problem is, nobody uses ground-based radars anymore. They use thermals. We're shredding these things to keep them out of the enemy's hands so that they can't use them for a weapon system that went away over 15 years ago. It doesn't make any sense. That's over $100 million. You got hunters, environmentalists, you got contractors, you got decorators who would love to have these things. They pay about $500 a piece for them. Guess what? We could get $500 a piece for them. It's just like if we just used them for a while, sold them, and then got all our money back. That's over $100 million in 10 years. Sites. There we go again. The ACOG. When they're done, they use them for about one deployment. Most people get them that's in the infantry and everything. They get them, they use them. They may have a couple scratches on them. They take a rebar, punch right through them. You make a deal with Bass Pro Shop or wherever, Cabela's, and say, hey, give us $200 a piece for them. Gee, guess what? They would jump all over that. Okay? They cost about $600-700 a piece. Okay, aircraft, F-16s, F-15s, whatever. They have to be cut in 1 foot sections, okay, or about. You know that there's people out there making these tables out of sections of wing and tail fins? They're getting thousands of dollars a piece for these things, but the problem is they can't find enough aircraft to cut up to make these tables out of. If they would section off aircraft and sell them like that, they'd make hundreds of millions of dollars, because these things are in high demand. They're very expensive. Display aircraft. Up till a few years ago, we sold whole aircraft for displays. People at car dealerships, at furniture dealerships, or whatever, they'd buy an airplane, put it out in front, and gee, guess what? It was an advertising tool. They still want to buy these things, but you can't buy them anymore. They got to be cut up into little sections. My proposal is take them, demill them by cutting the main airframe up, key points, and selling them as whole aircraft. But you can't do that anymore. Guys, we're throwing away money. Armored vehicles. Up till Jimmy Carter, we sold armored vehicles. Sold them. Not a problem. Gee, guess what? The loggers, contractors, rough terrain, anybody who works in rough terrain, environmentalists that can't get into areas, they would love an armored personnel carrier. Displays, museums, all these people would pay dearly for these things. Okay? You can import them from other countries. You can go to Russia right now, buy a brand new tank, one page ATF Form 6, and import in the country. Britain, we're importing hundreds of armored vehicles for collectors and all sorts of enthusiasts into this country from Britain, Russia, and other countries, Canada. And they're fully licensed, fully legal to own, but we're not doing it here. We're not selling any armored vehicles. And it's just silly, because the ATF, another government agency, has a way to properly demill these vehicles, get them in the public's hands. And boy, guess what? You have to pass a background check to buy any of these things anyway. It's silly. M113s. Third-party contractors would love to have these to sell in the open market. There's no place to put a gun on it, okay? Once you take off the basic gun mounts, like 4 bolts, they're just metal boxes. That's all they are. It makes no sense not to sell these things. Again, you go to Russia, you can buy a brand new tank or armored personnel carrier, have it shipped in the country, not a problem. Up until Jimmy Carter, we could do that, but now, we can't. The reason why this is happening is all self-inflicted, just silly rules. It's silly rules that people are interpreting on their own. You can actually take a rule that the State Department or the Commerce Department or whoever has put out there and interpret it any way you want, and that's what's happening. Blackout drive lights, for instance. Blackout drive lights make a vehicle basically unsellable sometimes. And the problem is, you've got blackout drive lights on every SUV in South Korea, in the civilian hands. It's just a light with a little pinhole in it. That's all it is. But that puts control in the vehicles to where it's just silly. It's over regulation. The thing is, when we demill these vehicles, when we crush them, whatever, we don't have the money to do it with. We have to borrow the money to get them crushed. It's just crazy. I mean, great for the National Guard. If you look on the DOD, DOL website right now, or DLA website, they've got a Michigan Air National Guard guy that saved the DLA $29 million. That is great. That is awesome. But the thing is, we can do so much more. We could save over $1 billion over the next 2 years. $1 billion over the next 2 years on just stuff that I found within the last couple hours. This is silly. It can be, in most circumstances, it's one guy's signature that's doing it. Call your congressman. Call your senator. This money's out there. It's crazy that we're not using it. It's nobody's going to get hurt. There's not been a legally owned armored vehicle used in a crime in the last 50 years that I can find. The only time that they've ever been used in a crime is when they've been stolen from the National Guard or reserves, or in the case of the California incident that happened nearly 30 years ago, somebody stole a tank from the Marine Corps Reserve. It doesn't happen. And they are so scared of the perception of any of this stuff getting out and anybody getting hurt over it. It's crazy when you can buy the stuff legally anyway. All right, well, I'm off my rant. Look for episode 3 coming up. We'll talk about some other stuff then too, but please take this video, share it. This is your money. Share the video, comment, please, and if you have a fraud, waste, and abuse comment, please send it to me. I'll use it on the air next time. And please, call your congressman. Call your congressman. Call your congressman. Because nobody in the government hates more when you get that packet down on your desk, a congressional review. Thanks much. Dave tomorrow.